We're going to talk a little bit about the St. Louis Cardinals and the historic, phenomenal run that they went on. Kevin, they won 17 consecutive games. I mean, this is the biggest winning streak that the MLB has seen since the Cleveland Indians won 22 straight back in 2017. I mean, just about a month and a half ago, the Cardinals were a sub 500 team. They had a very slim chance of making the playoffs, and they go on this monumental run where they've already claimed a National League wild card spot. So, Kevin, just give me your thoughts on just how impressive of a run this was from the St. Louis Cardinals.
And overall, as a baseball fan, right, you have to appreciate, especially this late in the season, we're talking 162 total games, right? We are talking about a team that was, if not 2% or just shy of a 2% chance of making the MLB playoffs August 8th or August 9th. We're talking like legitimately, almost impossible. They have since clinched that spot and have gone 18-1 in their last 19 games. They lost last night to the Brewers, and they just won against the Brewers today to close out that series. But I'm looking at this resume in terms of who they beat. These are no scrub teams. Granted, some of them are just barely under 500 outside of maybe one team. The Reds, they are up and down. Obviously, they're no dominant team. But then you have the Mets, who at the time were competing for their own wild card spot, but have since fluttered. The Padres, who have been up and down in the NL West, competing with the Dodgers and the Giants. Then you have Milwaukee, a team that has dominated the NL Central for the majority of this season. They swept them 4 in a row. Then you got the Cubs. Again, the Cubs are nobody. They traded Baez. They traded pretty much everybody. They've been a dumpster fire, but nevertheless, they beat them then 4 times in a row. And then this last series with the Milwaukee Brewers, where they took 2 out of 3. 17 games is absolutely ridiculous. The Yankees won 13, and I was flipping shit. I thought it was absolutely incredible. We were 10 games behind the Red Sox, and then we catapulted to where we were like 4 or 5 games above them. Obviously, we faltered, and we gave that lead right back. But overall, we're sitting here, and we're looking. I am so sorry. I got a phone call, so I had to put that back on my screen. We're sitting here. We're looking back at this 17-game win streak like, what just happened? Like, did they really just come back from the brink of absolute elimination? Kyle, tell me I'm wrong. When we were younger, or even now, when you watch SportsCenter and you see these statistics of the opportunities or chances of teams to make the playoffs, and you hit under like 20%, and you're like, well, they're not winning. They were legit at 2%, if not 1.8. That is basically an impossibility. And they went and made history. Adam Wainwright is having a historic season after being completely injury-ridden over the last 3 to 4 seasons. He's competing for a Cy Young. He's 17-7. The Cardinals are arguably the best team in baseball right now in terms of recent time. In the last 20 games,
They're the hottest.
dude, they're playing lights out, and they're not just barely winning games. I'm looking at some of these scores. We're talking 11-4, 10-2, 8-5. Like, they're putting up runs.
Yeah.
They're winning games in a reasonable and convincing fashion. They have now clinched the wild card spot to the point where I would fear anybody in the NL playing against this team, because in any sport, the hottest team going into the postseason is usually the scariest.
Mm-hmm.
Because they have that momentum, that success, that dominance over the last course of the season, whatever time frame that was. But I mean, shout out to the St. Louis Cardinals, man. Shout out to my boy Nick Bartolotta. He's been a Cardinals fan since we were kids back in high school, maybe even younger. Shout out to my man Andrew. He's from Iowa, but he's been a Cardinals fan for some time, obviously with Iowa being so close to Missouri. But dude, I don't know many Cardinals fans. I don't know many people that necessarily cheer for the Cardinals, but to those fans that stood loyal and had faith in this team when they were on the brink of, this season's a wash, kudos to you, man. Shout out to the Cardinals, bro. 17 in a row is no easy feat.
I mean, just to kind of dive into it, like in the early stages of August, they were 71-69. And even before then, they were under 500. So I think the reasonable expectation at that point in time is that that's just too big of a hole to get out of. And then September comes around, and they've been just nothing short of phenomenal. I think, if I remember correctly, They tied the 1934 Cardinals and like the 1942 Cardinals for like the most wins in the month of September in franchise history. Like that's how crazy this run was. And now they're currently sitting at an 89-70 record. It's one thing to get hot. It's another thing to get this type of hot. And I mean, they saved it for the best time possible because their chances, I believe, in August, they were around maybe 3% to make the playoffs. I think, Kevin, you alluded that it got as low as potentially 2% just like a couple weeks ago. But they said, screw that. Like, we're going to go on this major run. And not only are we going to do it in a way where we're just winning games, we're winning games convincingly. It's like you said, the offense that the Cardinals were displaying in these games was sensational. It wasn't just like they were winning like 2-1 or 3-2 or like 1-0. No, they were putting runs up consistently, like putting up 6+ runs in most of these wins during this winning streak. So you just got to give a lot of credit to not only the pitching staff for being able to hold opposing teams to relatively small scores. Like most of these scores that I see here are mostly kind of around 3-4 runs a game. That's manageable to work with if the offense is putting up at least 6+. And even in some of the closer games, granted they might have only put up 2 or 3 runs, but the pitching was shutting it down. So kudos to the Cardinals. They deserve it. They've definitely earned a playoff spot at this point just on the recent success that they have. And it's like you mentioned, Kev, this is not a team that you want to face in October because a team that is this hot, that is just rolling into the playoffs on every high imaginable. I mean, if you're the Dodgers, if you're the Giants, if you're any team that could potentially play them in any sort of playoff setting, watch out